Introduce ourselves first. I'm Donald Rogers. I teach history at Central Connecticut State University, and I've been involved in We the People for many years, and our other colleagues are Dan.
Good morning. I'm Dan Taubman. I'm a senior judge on the Colorado Court of Appeals in Denver, Colorado, and I too have worked with We the People competition for many years, and I congratulate you on getting to participate in the National We the People Challenge this morning.
Good morning. I'm Dave Adler. I'm president of the Alturas Institute and adjunct professor of law at University of Idaho. I also have participated in the national finals for many years and always enjoy the opportunity to meet with very bright, capable students. Congratulations on your achievement. You've overcome a lot to reach this point in time. It's nice to be with you.
So students, please tell us who you are and tell us one thing that you were doing before the coronavirus hit.
Hello, we are Unit 4 from Grant High School in Portland, Oregon. My name is Rebecca Patterson. One thing I was doing before is playing lacrosse.
I'm Nathan Stein. One thing I was doing before this was doing mock trial.
My name is Ethan Wickman. One thing I was doing before this was going to school.
Hello, I'm Thomas Leonhardt. What I was doing before this was I was studying for my chemistry tests.
Hi. My name is Trevor Balsley, and one thing I was doing before this was playing my guitar, which I'm still doing.
Hi, I'm Ruby Donaghu. One thing that I was doing before this was rock climbing a lot, and sometimes even with our whole unit. And this is our teacher, Miss D. Pasquale.
Welcome.
Good. Tell us who your teacher was, who your teacher is.
Our teacher is Miss D. Pasquale.
Okay, well, congratulations to her for bringing such a good team. So you know that we're on Unit 4. We're going to ask you question 3, and I'll ask the question to remind us all what it's about, and then we'll look forward to your presentation. Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution provides that state legislatures can determine the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives, yet gives Congress the power to make or alter such regulations. What are the advantages and disadvantages of a uniform election process? And what responsibility do state legislatures, state election officials, and citizens have in maintaining free and fair elections? What are the advantages and disadvantages of the trustee and delegate theories of representation as they apply to congressional districts? Please go ahead.
A uniform election process would eliminate obsolete state practices and burdensome restrictions on the right to vote. For example, in 2008, only 17% of Iowa's registered voters participated in the state's caucuses, and in 2020, technical difficulties delayed results. A uniform process also promises uniform voting rights. Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act required the Department of Justice to pre-clear proposed election laws passed by states with a history of discrimination, but in Shelby County v. Holder, the Supreme Court invalidated this protection, opening the door for a new era of state-run voter suppression, which federal control could eliminate.
In a uniform system, Congress could institute equitable voting practices across the nation. But in Federalist 59, Hamilton feared that empowering the United States to regulate the elections for the particular states would be an unwarrantable transposition of power. Patterson noted that states, being best acquainted with the situation of the people, would best regulate their own elections. Uniform systems also increase the risk of nationwide interference and recounts. Our non-uniform election system allows both states and the national government to control the means of their own preservation, and allows states to act as laboratories of democracy.
In our current election system, state legislatures are responsible for safeguarding the integrity of elections, avoiding confusion and deception, and preventing corruption. These responsibilities include decisions on districting, voter registration, and enabling poll accessibility. But, as seen in Cooper v. Harris, Lulac v. Perry, and Rucho v. Common Cause, when legislators consider race, political affiliation, or prospects for re-election in creating election laws, they fail to maintain free and fair elections.
After Bush v. Gore, Congress passed the Help America Vote Act, which assigned state election officials responsibility for training local election officials, administering registration databases, and overseeing the use of federal funds. Ultimately, voters rely on election officials to implement equitable voting standards. Citizens can advocate for new laws that expand access to voting. For example, Oregon instituted vote by mail through Citizens Initiative in 1998. Most importantly, citizens must exercise their right to vote.
Framers like John Adams supported the delegate model, envisioning the popularly chosen House as, in miniature, an exact portrait of the people at large. The delegate model aligns with the ideals of direct democracy, but risks tyranny of the majority. It is also impossible to consider the concerns of each American when the average congressperson represents over 700,000 citizens. The trustee model, which the framers envisioned for the Senate, avoids this difficulty. As Edmund Burke wrote, your representative owes you his judgment, and he betrays you if he sacrifices it to your opinion. However, relying on one person's judgment may allow for minority control, or worse, disregard of the people's interests entirely.
Senator Thomas Dodd observed that all members of Congress have a primary interest in being re-elected. Some have no other interest. This forces representatives to follow the Politico model, voting as delegates on issues that matter to their constituents, but as trustees when the public isn't vocal on an issue. But being heard requires money and resources, leading representatives to advocate for the rich and the powerful. Our government draws its legitimacy from the authorization and accountability to the people provided by the election process. Therefore, representatives must maintain free and fair elections, the cornerstone of democracy. Thank you. We are ready for your questions.
Thank you. Very, very nice presentation. Do you think that the Shelby decision weakened the amount of authority that the framers originally hoped that Congress would have to make or alter regulations on the state level regarding voting?
I believe that the ruling in Shelby County v. Holder did remove an essential part of Congress's authority due to the fact that after the ruling, within 24 hours, Texas announced a strict voter ID law.
In Federalist 59, Hamilton explained that Congress's duty under Article 1, Section 4 was to step in extraordinary circumstances. And I believe that the immense voter suppression that we saw after Shelby County v. Holder did qualify as an extraordinary circumstance and something that needed congressional oversight.
In her dissent on Shelby County v. Holder, Ruth Bader Ginsburg noted that removing preclearance because you can see some sort of racial progress is like getting rid of an umbrella in your rainstorm because you're not getting wet. I think that the Voting Rights Act Section 5 played an important role of providing oversight, and it actually didn't allow us to see the discrimination maybe that was still happening, but it certainly still was, and it was definitely necessary to keep.
The founders certainly weren't totally one way on this. Many anti-federalists cited Article 1, Section 4 as a complete overreach of the federal government's power and viewed that the states should have more control over their elections as closer to the people.
Dan, why don't you go ahead?
As you all know, there have been a number of constitutional amendments dealing with the right to vote. Can you tell us a little bit about those amendments and how they square with Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution that we've been discussing?
The 14th Amendment stated that representatives shall be chosen by the people themselves and introduced more proportional representation, but also amended part of Article 1, Section 4 and added enforcement for Congress to regulate states' use of the time, places, and manner in making their election laws. And the 15th Amendment, of course, said that no state shall remove the right to suffrage on the basis of race.
The 19th Amendment gave suffrage to people regardless of their sex. And this was something that we saw in states had already been giving suffrage to women. But the 19th Amendment superseded the Article 1, Section 4 power that is given to states and said that no matter what, race or sex cannot be a bar to vote.
The 26th Amendment also expanded the franchise to 18-year-olds to vote, and previously it was only to 21-year-olds. This came during the Vietnam War when men could be sent to fight but could not vote in elections.
The 24th Amendment made poll taxes unconstitutional, which further expanded the right to vote so that it could not be abridged based on a failure to pay any sum of money.
David?
Thank you. You noted very nicely the reluctance of Congress to step in to exercise its corrective power under Article 1, Section 4. If we face circumstances involving voter suppression and the willingness perhaps of some states to reduce the number of polling sites to a bare minimum, making it difficult for voters to turn out, do you suppose then that Congress should step in? And if Congress does not, then do you believe that the court should be asked to resolve that kind of a problem?
I believe that Congress should step in, and I do think if they do not, the court should afterwards. I believe cases such as Baker v. Carr and Reynolds v. Sims shows that you cannot discriminate based on location or urban versus rural. And so in places where polling places are being closed in urban areas and not in rural areas due to the coronavirus, this is discrimination based on location, and this is unconstitutional.
I disagree. Although it was a per curiam opinion, I agree with Justice Roberts in the recent decision in RNC v. DNC that Congress should not step in and alter regulations on the eve of elections, and that should be left up to states to alter their regulations.
However, in RNC v. DNC, the court noted that the court is prohibited from stepping in on the eve of elections in ordinary circumstances. I believe that the circumstances that we face today are certainly not ordinary, and courts should do whatever is necessary to remedy violations of vested legal rights.
So what authority do the courts have to intervene in election cases? I mean, Article 1, Section 4 doesn't mention the courts.
The court has intervened in elections cases on a few different occasions. One of the most notable ones would be seen in Harper v. Virginia Board of Elections, in which the court ruled that poll taxes in state elections were unconstitutional under the Equal Protection Clause.
So any other authority that courts can turn to?
Well, the courts could turn to the guarantee clause because that under Article 4, Section 4, that allows them to have it means that all states must be guaranteed a Republican form of government, which necessarily implies voting. However, it is a political question. At least that's what the court has ruled in past cases, such as specific states, Tennessee, Oregon, or Luther v. Oregon.
You mentioned that Oregon has had voting by mail, and as does Colorado.
That's time.
If you give me your email addresses, I'll email you later and tell you the rest of my question and ask for your thoughtful responses to it.
Oh, that was a very, very nice presentation. You all did a terrific job. We're going to give you some feedback now. There's so many good things about your presentation that I liked. It was you all participated. You all had good things to say. I thought it was a very thorough answer to the questions. You were very responsive to the questions that we asked. You went right down the list of amendments. I might have liked to heard about the 10th Amendment. Would that perhaps be applicable to voting, since that may justify a state authority? Again, I thought a very good presentation.
I'd like to commend you too. I thought you did an excellent job. I've always commended teams that have 6 students as you do. I think that's really difficult to do in a limited time. And unless you're all actually sitting outside of your high school socially distancing 6 feet apart, I especially commend you for being able to coordinate your responses so well to all our questions. I thought there were a lot of good details in both your opening statement and answers to our questions, and mentioning Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, and Shelby mentioning the Help America Vote Vote Act was good. Mentioning Federalist 59, I appreciate it. You might have mentioned, in addition to that Help America Vote Act, there are various other federal laws that have been passed besides the Voting Rights Act and the Help America Vote Act that shows the authority of the federal government to participate in the area of voting. You also might have mentioned that all of the suffrage amendments have added a specific section that says Congress has the authority to enforce these amendments by appropriate legislation. And I think that might have been worth mentioning. But I agree with Professor Rogers that your recitation of all of the amendments dealing with suffrage was very good. I liked your quote from the dissent in Shelby County from Justice Ginsburg, which I've read before, but it's a very colorful quote. I like your reference to the Supreme Court's recent decision in RNC v. DNC. I think that shows that you're keeping current with events in this area. So very good job to all of you.
I agree with my colleagues and want to congratulate you on a terrific presentation. I appreciate the historical depth and understanding that you brought to your presentation. I liked very much the range that you exhibited, going from Hamilton and John Adams and Edmund Burke up to the current controversies and the invocation of relevant cases. I like the facility that you demonstrated in your ability to do a deep dive into some of the issues, including the availability of the guarantee clause that ultimately the court could use to rationalize its intervention, and indeed your citation to Luther versus Borden. I thought you demonstrated a very, very good command of the case law as you moved across the decades. I like the fact that you knew very quickly all of the different constitutional amendments that bear on suffrage. I think if you didn't mention one or two things, it's probably only because you ran out of time. But I too also believe that the team chemistry and organization were superb, and you're obviously a very well-trained, well-prepared group. That's a great credit to your teacher. Good luck the rest of the way. It was enjoyable. Thank you very much.